holy. So let's start with the refuge and Bodhicitta and foundation of all good qualities. Thanks. Zangye cheta soye chanama chanjo bando dani kyabso che dagi jinso yebe sonange Tola pinje sangye roboro sho. I take refuge till I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. Foundation of all good qualities is a kind and perfect Guru. Correctly following the Guru is the root of the path. By my clearly seeing this and applying great effort, please bless me to rely upon the Guru with great respect. When I have discovered that the precious freedom of this rebirth is found only once, it is extremely difficult to find again, and is greatly meaningful, please bless me to unceasingly generate the mind taking its essence day and night. This body and life are changing like a water bubble. Remember how quickly they perish and death comes. After death, just like a shadow follows the body, the results of black and white karma follow. When I have found definite conviction in this, please bless me always to be conscientious in abandoning even the slightest collection of shortcomings and in accomplishing all virtuous deeds. When I have recognized the shortcomings of samsaric perfections, there is no satisfaction in enjoying them. They are the door to all suffering, and they cannot be trusted. Please bless me to generate a strong wish for the bliss of liberation. Through my being led by this pure thought, with great remembrance, alertness, and conscientiousness, please bless me to make keeping the individual liberation vows the root of the teachings my essential practice. Just as I have fallen into the sea of samsara, so have all mother transmigratory beings. By my seeing this, please bless me to train in supreme bodhicitta, which bears the responsibility of freeing transmigratory beings. Even if I develop only bodhicitta, without familiarizing myself with the three types of morality, I cannot achieve enlightenment. By my seeing this, please bless me to keep the vow of the sons of victorious ones with fervent effort. By my having pacified distractions to wrong objects and correctly analyzed the meaning of reality, please bless me to quickly generate within my mind stream a unified path of calm abiding and special insight. When I become a suitable vessel by training in the common path, please bless me to immediately enter the holy gateway of the fortunate beings, the supreme of all vehicles, the Vajrayana. At that time, the basis of accomplishing the two attainments is keeping my vows and samaya purely. When I have gained effortless conviction in this, please bless me to protect them even at the cost of my life. Then when I have realized exactly the vital points of the two stages, the essence of the tantric sets, and I'm enjoying the yoga of 4 sessions with effort without being distracted by non-meditation objects, please bless me to accomplish these according to the teachings of the holy beings. Thus may the virtuous friends who reveal the noble path and the spiritual practitioners who correctly accomplish it have long lives. Please bless me to pacify completely the collections of outer and inner obstacles. In all my lives, never separated from perfect gurus, may I enjoy the magnificent Dharma, and by completing the qualities of the grounds and paths, may I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. So let's spend a few minutes thinking about that, mainly trying to generate a bodhicitta motivation for this time we're going to be spending together in order to get the most out of the time, and especially in order to generate that mind, mainly thinking about the suffering of the other sentient beings, so that we can generate the mind of compassion, great compassion, that finds the suffering unbearable, so that we take upon ourselves the responsibility to liberate them and lead them to enlightenment, thinking I myself alone will do that. And then, in order to be able to do that, the determination to achieve enlightenment. We're talking about Bodhicitta at the moment in Lama Tsongkhapa's mid-length stage of the path, to awakening, Chanchu Lamrim. And well, I just mentioned because I noticed that so before as a sort of foundational basis for the main meditations on generating bodhicitta, those 7 steps. We have equanimity and anyway, so equanimity seems reasonable. It's to do with being unbiased. And I noticed that yeah, so I think it's okay anyway. This where it says a lot of the time the word comes to equanimous mind. I think it's the same as equanimity, so maybe no problem there. Where we are in the text is page 200, and it's the second paragraph down. The first paragraph was talking about how there are, if you don't have equanimity, you won't really be able to develop loving kindness, compassion, and the special attitude. And actually, I've been thinking about this special attitude. I think the exceptional resolve is better because it's to do with, resolving, making a firm decision in your mind, making the resolution, the decision, to take responsibility, special attitude, special thought, exceptional attitude doesn't quite get it as well as special resolve. Any hapa samba, lakasam. Yeah. So something. So yeah, and in fact, the equanimity, it's like, to use the analogy that I heard from Geshe Drapa, which I think is good actually, which is, if you want to build a house, then you need to sort of even the ground out. If there are, like if I can't even think of the words now, but anyway, so there are sort of like dips, and then there are mounds and so on. It's quite difficult to work with. And if you even the ground out, then it's much easier to build your house on top of that. I mean, I don't think it's really a sort of, what you call, an argument against that analogy. But when I was thinking about that when I first heard it, I was thinking to myself, yeah, I remember I spent some time in Hong Kong, a few months in Hong Kong once, quite a long time ago, before Margaret Thatcher gave it back to Deng Xiaoping. So yeah, so there are houses where there are buildings anyway, buildings where, like, you go in at ground level, you go to the other end of the building and you're like 6 or 7 or 8 floors up. But I'm pretty sure that the people who built those buildings would agree that if the ground had been even, it would have been a lot easier. Yeah. So that's good. It's just easier, just makes things easier. And arguably, like, impossible. Well, okay, so in terms of the analogy, not exactly impossible, but just really difficult. In the terms of what it's an analogy for, having the even-minded attitude, unbiased way of relating to people that's contained within the equanimity meditation, it would be impossible. It would actually be impossible to develop loving kindness and great compassion and so on, because the whole point of those the whole point of those is, I mean, like if how would you be really a compassionate, caring person if it's just a certain section of sentient beings that you're going to care for and help? It just doesn't make sense, does it? So in case of, in that case there, it's actually without equanimity, it's impossible. With the analogy, it's very difficult, but well, the actual meditation is impossible. And then it mentions there are these different two types. It mentions two types of possible meaning for equanimity, and Lama Tsongkhapa says it's not. Isn't he? Doesn't he say the two types of equanimous mind that have been taught are that which has the appearance of lacking mental afflictions such as attachment, anger, and so forth in sentient beings, and that which there is no attachment or anger towards sentient beings. Here it refers to the latter. So that's why I was talking about immeasurable equanimity. And it's interesting actually, because in Pabongka Geshe Nyingpo's Liberation, there he says that what we're trying to develop here is limitless equanimity. And he says there are two types of limitless equanimity. One where you're thinking of others and you want them to have equanimity, and the other is when you're trying to develop that quality in yourself. And so he says it's the latter. Whereas other masters say limitless equanimity is, like in the Four Limitless Thoughts, is focused on others and their, attachment and anger and so on. And so they say it's not that. But it's just a way of speaking, it's just, it doesn't, however you put it anyway, the point is that this is a quality you're developing yourself and not just wishing for others to have. Raining quite heavily. Okay, so that was last time. Then, so now he says, okay, so talking about the order of meditation. What he's talking about here is so whenever we're talking about equanimity, we're going to be talking about friend, enemy, stranger, friend, enemy, neutral person, like that. And to do the equanimity meditation, you have to find one of each of those. And the way Lama Tsongkhapa seems to be explaining it is you meditate on one after the other. Whereas Pabongka Rinpoche, who's obviously a much later master, I mean, he was, I can't remember his dates, but he was maybe early 20th century, maybe late 19th. It makes sense because after he passed away, there was a reincarnation that died quite young, and now there is another one. I think he lives in Nepal, and he's probably about, 40, 45, something like that. But anyway, so he says he thinks it's much better to imagine the three in front of you. So you can try either way, see which works best for you. But anyway, let's see what Lama Tsongkhapa says. So as for the order of meditation, because it's easier to get it, it will more easily arise because it will work better. Initially, take as your object of attention a neutral person. So first think of a neutral person. Then he's going to say, then the person who is your friend, and then the one who's your enemy. And this takes a little bit of thinking about, because especially, I mean, we all know that there are people we're attached to, and then some of us might think, oh, I don't have any enemies. Anyway, the person who harms you, that's the name for that is enemy. The person who helps you, the name for that is friend. The person who doesn't really help or harm either way is the name for that is stranger or neutral person. Yeah. So sometimes actually it's quite interesting, when you sit down to do the meditation, since this is how you're meant to do it, you've got to have a friend, an enemy, and stranger. It's like, okay, so who's my friend? Who's the one that I tend to feel sort of like close to, and yeah, maybe attached to, have some attachment for. Who's the one that's my enemy? Who's my enemy? Who's the neutral person? It can be that in itself can be quite interesting. I think the thing is that, well, speaking from my own experience, I think, like I would say probably we all have somebody that we just kind of like don't really like, just not a very nice person, we feel not a very nice person. And so it's good to focus on such a person. And the thing is, maybe there are different approaches to this, but I know that my teacher Gentecho, he would always say, ask yourself why. And that seems to be, that seems to come from Pavonka. Why do I think of this person as my friend? Why do I feel so like close to them and attached? Why? What's the reason? What's the reason I dislike this person? And why is it I think of them as my enemy? Why do I feel like neutral about this person? The neutral person, stranger, as they say, often in the translations. So the bar, that means a neutral person, somebody in between, kind of thing, somebody in between, not really friend and not really enemy. Okay, so initially take as your object of attention a neutral person. Now you have to, it's quite interesting to think, well, why is he recommending the neutral person first? I don't think it's that difficult to work out. I mean, if we're the kind of person that doesn't really have real enemies, like people that I don't know, maybe even feel like killing because of what they've done. And anyways, the thing is that generally speaking, I think if you were to choose the attachment, the friend or the enemy first, it could bring up too much emotion, so it's difficult to work with. So you start with the neutral person, and it's easier to get the meditation going with that person, and then it's sort of like just in a way applying that to the friend and the enemy. Okay, so neither helped nor harmed you, and develop an equanimous mind. So Art Engel he's the one who edited and translated for the other version of the Liberation. He's a very good translator. So he just says even-mindedness. So develop an even mind. Doesn't make too much difference for the equanimous mind and even mind through eliminating attachment and anger. So what do you think of that? So it says here, Lama Tsongkhapa says, start with the neutral person, right? And then eliminate attachment and anger. So what does he mean by that? Isn't the neutral person the one that you don't feel particularly anger or attachment towards? So isn't that a bit strange? Don't you think it's a bit strange? Take as the object of your attention a neutral person who has neither helped nor harmed. If you go through the whole of the explanation, then it's like help is like on the side of friend, then harm, on the side of harm you've got the enemy, on the side of the friend, then attachment arising, the enemy, the anger arising. Because of attachment, because of our attachment, then creating negative karma on their account. on the side of the enemy, you know, out of anger, creating negative karma, destructive actions on their account. And that's really one of the main reasons why we need equanimity, even never mind about, you know, developing bodhicitta. If you don't have equanimity, then you end up creating so much negative karma. Don't you? Yeah, I have to think about that. So generally speaking, you see, if you don't have the equanimity, then there's a risk, you know. Sometimes you have to just look at your own life more carefully, more closely. But generally speaking, you can see how there would be a risk if you've got certain people that you're very attached to. And we have to think about this attachment, not in there, because there seem to be some positive kinds of attachment. So here we're talking about, you know, like kind of like grasping attachment, selfish, kind of self-centered attachment, because you know, going over to the way of meditating on this, that, as I was saying, my teacher Gentecho explained, this person has helped me, and that's why I feel close to them and think of them as a friend. See, it's all to do with me, right? It's to do with me. This person helped me, so I like them. They're my friend. I'll lie for them. I'll steal for them. I'll kill for them. It can become like that, right? And of course, obviously on the side of the enemy, you know, so why do I not like this person? Because they harmed me. They did something I didn't like. Maybe they looked at me in the wrong way. Maybe they just didn't smile at me. And I've noticed this in traffic. I have to think about, I think it's similar in the States, around here for sure, you know, it's like you you're driving along and there's really only enough room for one car. So one of the cars has to give way. And you always have to sort of like put up your hand to acknowledge that, you know, that you've stopped to allow the other person to give way, and the other person has to acknowledge, you know, with a little bit of a wave. They have to acknowledge that you did something for them. And if the person doesn't acknowledge that you did them a kindness by stopping the car to let them through, then people start swearing. It's quite funny, really. But that's what happens. You're like, oh, thank you, kind of thing, you know, that kind of thing. So it can be the slightest things, such silly things that will annoy us, and we feel this kind of, that, you know, that kind of like, kind of even just feeling a bit irritation. And then what happens, you know, if you were to see that person who didn't acknowledge you bump into a tree straight away, you'd be thinking, serves you right, kind of thing. Okay, anyway, these are things we have to just think about ourselves, find out for ourselves, really. Anyway, so yeah, so that's the attachment. So then that's how, you know, if you think about it, it's not very difficult to see how out of attachment we engage in actions quite easily that are destructive and lead to suffering. And likewise, you know, with out of the anger, distinguishing, what do you call it? Yeah, discerning somebody as being like your enemy, the person you don't like. Anyway, let's keep going. So anyway, but what about this? The you've got the neutral person, and you're supposed to eliminate attachment and anger towards them. The only way that I can make sense of this is because supposedly the neutral person is, like, by definition, the one that you don't feel attachment to or anger to, but you could do. And so this here, it's like, you know, through the meditation, and he doesn't really go much into the meditation, although there's a little bit further down, but he just outlines it. Okay, so first of all, the neutral person, then the friend, then the enemy, then apply it to to everybody. Then he gives some tips from Kamalashila and Sutra on how to think, the kind of thing you could be thinking of during that meditation. So, friend, enemy, stranger. So the thing is, then, with the stranger, if you're going to start off with the stranger or the neutral person, so you would need to ask yourself, why do I feel neutral about this person? Why do I feel neutral about this person? Why do I not particularly feel close or distant from them? Why do I not feel any particular attachment or anger towards them? And, according to my teacher, you would probably come up with come to the conclusion, they haven't really done anything for me to help me. They haven't done anything to harm me. So that's why. And again, even that feeling of like, what do you call it? That neutral, so we've called the person neutral person, that kind of like not caring one way or the other anyway, whatever the word is for that, not really caring one way or the other, is again actually self-centered. They didn't help me particularly, didn't harm me particularly, so it doesn't matter. They don't matter really. I don't particularly want to help them, and I don't particularly want to harm them. So when things are going well for them, I don't particularly care. When things are going badly for them, that doesn't bother me either. In the case of the one that I feel close to, the one I'm attached to, then I'll probably feel quite upset when things go badly for them and happy when things go well for them. And the person who's harmed me, if things go well for them, then I feel unhappy. When things go badly for them, then I really like that. But here, for the neutral person, not feeling one way or the other. But so I think when he says eliminating attachment and anger towards the neutral person, it can only mean you see why you feel neutral towards them, and you resolve not to get involved in attachment to them or anger towards them in the future. At the moment you have that feeling of like not caring one way or the other, which is actually starting to be a little bit shaken up by it. And it makes more sense in the context of the meditation as a whole. So, if you're doing it the way Pavonka says, think of all three, so there's this neutral person. Why do I feel neutral towards them? The friend, why do I feel that closeness towards them? The enemy, why do I feel that that kind of enmity towards them? And you also start thinking about how, well, so this person I feel close to because of something nice they did, something I liked that they did. If they do something I don't like, then they're going to turn into my enemy. The enemy is going to turn into a friend. Quite easily, these things do happen, don't they? I mean, I'm sure everybody must have somebody in their life that they felt very close to and then they really fell out with, or the other way around. Somebody who, when you first saw them, immediate reaction was like, I don't like this person. Then you get to know them and become very close. So this kind of thing can happen. So you see, then that's why I feel neutral towards this person. And if they were to help me, they'd immediately turn to my friend, attachment. If they were to harm me, immediately they turn to my enemy, anger, and all that mess, the negative karma and so on, and the suffering you have to experience, perpetuating your, life in psychic existence and all that. So I think it's like that, guarding your, so by meditating on equanimity with regard to the neutral person, is like you've got this developing this insight where you feel like I'm not going to fall into either of those two pitfalls of, that's like self-centered attachment, selfish attachment, anger, and so on. I think it must mean that. Okay. When an equanimous mind towards that person has developed, then you need to develop, then develop an equanimous mind towards friends and relatives. A mind that lacks equanimity, so if you don't have an equanimous mind towards them, why is that? So what he says is it's either because of attachment and hatred, why you don't feel equanimity towards that, towards the friends and relatives, is just because of attachment and anger. That's either that he's suggesting, either that's the reason, or degrees of attachment. So owing to attachment and hatred, or lacking equanimity owing to a lesser or greater degree of attachment. So I think what he's talking about here must be that within those that we feel close to, some we feel more close to, some we feel less close to, and so you're willing to make more sacrifices. Maybe you're willing to help the ones that you feel most close to, even if it's at the expense of others who you feel close to, but not as close to. So you still don't have equanimity. Even amongst your friends, you don't feel equally attached to all of them, that kind of thing. Once you're equanimous towards friends, you should then cultivate an equanimous mind towards enemies. The lack of equanimity towards enemies derives from hatred that sees them as totally incompatible with yourself. So anyway, this is where it becomes a little bit confusing to keep using the word equanimity, because equanimity, generally we always think friend, enemy, and stranger, having an even mind towards all of those. Equanimity towards one person seems a bit odd, but anyway, I think this even-minded, in other words, whether you say equanimous mind or equanimity, or having an even mind, what it's to do with is the person who, because later on Lama Tsongkhapa says it's not that there's no such thing as friend, enemy, and stranger. What the equanimity meditation is aimed at is overcoming that grasping attachment towards those people who help you, the anger towards those people who harm you, and the indifference towards those people who are not particularly harming or helping you. That's what he's saying. So the even-mindedness is to do with the person who helps you actually having the feeling towards them, which is the same as the feeling towards the enemy and the neutral person, even-minded in that sense. So it's like, going back to the analogy of of making the ground even in order to build on, it's like where you see the friend, your mind is even. It's not it's not a trough, it's not a mound, it's even. Towards all three of them, your mind is even. So I think that, I think that's the point there. Okay. Then after you have become equanimous towards them, even the enemy, then cultivate it towards all sentient beings. So that's actually quite interesting because I know I used to think, like all sentient beings put into one or the other of these categories. And it seems more like from what he's saying here, since he's saying, after you've got equanimity towards friend, enemy, and stranger, then apply it to all sentient beings. The friend, enemy, and stranger, it's like the people that you interact with, the people that you know, the people that you live with. So then once you've got the equanimity there, then spread that equanimity out to all sentient beings. Okay. So anyway, that's again, whether you think of them one by one or whether you sort of imagine all three of them in front of you. It doesn't mean, if you imagine all three in front of you, doesn't mean to say you have to think of all three at once, but it's like, they're all three there and you're thinking about this one, this one, this one. And it's, in some ways, it's, it seems like better to do it that way. And Lama Tsongkhapa is not exactly saying you shouldn't meditate in that way. If we want to sort of like combine what Lama Tsongkhapa says with what Pabonka Rinpoche says, then you imagine the three in front of you and you start off with the neutral person. Then you start thinking about the person you're attached to. Then you think about the person you feel the anger towards, friend, enemy, and stranger. So first stranger, first, then friend, then enemy. Now, so in a way, even just recognizing that if I don't have equanimity, then it's just such a mess because of the destructive things I end up doing because of this. So that already helps actually to undermine that bias, that uneven attitude. It already helps. So then doing this, meditation, going through all three, that's going to make it even, have even more impact. Now, Lama Tsongkhapa quotes from Kamalashila. So Kamalashila, he used to have been a pretty amazing master. I think that Shantirakshita, who's like the first Indian master that went and lived in Tibet. So it's because of him they invited Pamasambhava, and I think that also Kamalashila. So Kamalashila composed these 3 books. Each of them were called Stages of Meditation, Gomrim or Bhavanakrama, which His Holiness has always been very fond of, often teaches. Very nice, actually. I think the middle-length one is the one that's translated into English. I'm not sure all 3 of them have been, but very nice anyway, very nice. So anyway, so Kamalashila, and he wrote those in Tibet. So Kamalashila's the second of 3 stages of meditation says, so think like this: since from their side all sentient beings are the same in wanting happiness and not wanting suffering, it would be unreasonable for me to benefit some who I consider close and harm or fail to benefit others who I consider distant. So that's one thing that he's and that's useful, So now, imagining those 3 in front of you and thinking to yourself, from their side, all they want is happiness. They don't want to suffer, just like me, exactly the same as me. They're all the same also, friend, enemy, stranger. All 3 of these, all they want is happiness as much as possible. Never like to suffer, even the least, just like me. So why have this uneven mind? That's very useful. Then he has another sort of suggestion. So the second one, since from my own side, there is not a single sentient being who in beginningless cyclic existence has not been my companion, maybe friend, hundreds of times. So to who should I have attachment So who should I have attachment for, and who should I have hatred for? Anyway, that's good. Then also with regard to attachment to our relatives, there's a quote from this sutra, the questions of the daughter Chandrottara Sutra. Daughter, it could be Pumo, could just mean a girl. So maybe this girl asked questions, and then the Buddha taught on that in response to that question, her questions. And so there's this verse. In former times, I killed each one of you. I too was slashed and cut into pieces by you. We all have been foes and murderers of each other. How can a mind of attachment arise in you? So it's a way of thinking to cut through, to break down that grasping attachment. The person that you feel so attached and think is so dear, so wonderful, they help me. This very person has killed me in so many lifetimes and tortured me and cut me to pieces in so many lifetimes. It's sort of like you can see what it's aimed at. It's aimed at sort of like just just gradually wearing away at that grasping. Think about the way in which friends and enemies quickly change, as it was explained above in the context of the fault of uncertainty. So that's in the middle scope meditations, where you think about what do they call it, the suffering of uncertainty. And one of the things which is most uncertain in the sense of like not fixed, not being fixed, is he even talked about that, like friend, enemy, and stranger. The friend becomes the enemy becomes the stranger becomes friend becomes stranger, and it's just they're just constantly changing roles, especially over many lifetimes, but even in one lifetime they change so easily. We need to distinguish we need to distinguish friends from enemies by apprehending them to be the basis of their respective attributes. What is to be ceased is the mind that is biased owing to attachment and anger on account of someone being a friend or enemy. The notion of friend and enemy itself does not need to be averted or stopped. So anyway, that's the main point, that's the main thing that he's saying there, which I mentioned before. Friend, enemy, and stranger, that's real. But so the equanimity meditation isn't aimed at, like stopping that. It's just reality. What it's aimed at is stopping the attachment and anger and indifference. It's interesting, actually, because I think this is related. They say when one of the meditations on feelings, in the sense, like pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neutral feelings, they say that with attachment there's a tendency for with pleasant feelings there's the tendency for attachment to arise. You want that pleasant feeling, you want it more, you don't want to be separated from it. With the unpleasant feelings, there's the tendency for anger to arise towards those that you feel are the responsible for your pain. And then with neutral feelings, which we have quite a lot, then neutral feelings somehow keeps the ignorance going. And I was thinking, somehow it becomes more clear here with the friend, enemy, and the stranger, because when you think about this, the the friend, it's like the mind becomes active and quite busy. It's like, oh, it's my friend. What are they doing? What are they saying? I want to be with them. This and that kind of thing. The enemy, your mind is also quite like active. It's like, you know, here they come. They did this. They did that. I'm going to get my own back. That kind of thing. With the neutral person, it's like your mind goes into neutral. Your mind goes into sort of a sort of like a stupid state, a dull state. So you see kind of like the connection to ignorance from that point of view. Not really caring, not really, nothing happening in the mind because this person didn't harm me, didn't help me. Anyway, so I think it would be good to stop for a few minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, maybe, and think about equanimity. Do the meditation and just think about the things we've been talking about. Just think about these things. One thing I'd like to finish off with before we go on to the next thing here, which is, recognizing all sentient beings as one mother, is you see, it's probably obvious already that when you're trying to develop equanimity, you're working with attachment and anger, right? Your own attachment and your own anger. And that means understanding what is meant by attachment and anger, because these texts are talking about it. So what do they mean by that? What do they mean by attachment and anger? And also indifference, actually. But there's more in the literature about attachment and anger for sure. And identifying them in yourself and understanding their destructive nature, right? So there's that. And then I thought it would be interesting to mention in some of the sadhanas, the deity sadhanas, well, it's not unusual for there to be for these practices, these texts to include the 4 immeasurable thoughts. And it's quite interesting. You might be interested to hear that the way that the equanimity, immeasurable equanimity, is expressed in a couple of those sadhanas. So there's one, the Vajrabhaira. Anyway, it's Yamantaka. So there, jidengi chugidan zunzingi namdogi migyobe tanyongla chao. So it talks about, it expresses the intention to lead sentient beings to be able to live in a state of equanimity, unshaken by or unmoved by the 8 worldly dharmas, and so zunzingi, so basically ignorance, grasping at true existence. So from that, you get the idea that really to go into equanimity, when you're trying to develop equanimity, it's kind of like you've got to be able to overcome the 8 worldly dharmas. Because if you think about it, it's very much implied really by the explanation so far, which is that if you ask yourself, why do I have this feeling of attachment towards this person? Why do I feel the anger towards this person? It all comes down to still, being under the sway of, controlled by the thought of the 8 worldly dharmas. The being very happy when people praise us and give us things, and having a good reputation and so on. When we're experiencing pleasure, we like it, that kind of thing, and not liking the opposite. So that's what it's saying there. And then really somehow showing that the equanimity meditation is really very deep, because to really work with this lack of equanimity, so that we can move towards equanimity, real equanimity, you've got to even work with the misconceptions about reality, the grasping it through existence. So that's one thing. And then in the Haruka Body Mandala, then Nyumunpa and Nyumun. So basically, expressing the determination to lead sentient beings to an equanimity which is equanimity through becoming free of all of the mental afflictions. So in other words, it's somehow, you're generally speaking having to work with your own mental afflictions in order to be able to reach a state of equanimity. So it's not it's quite deep anyway. It's the meditation which is quite deep, really, a practice which is quite deep. But still, anyway, the way that we're normally taught it's fairly straightforward, thinking about the destructiveness of not having equanimity, thinking about friend, enemy, and stranger. Why do I have this attachment, anger? Recognizing that the friend, enemy, and stranger are not fixed. They change, even in one lifetime, they change. So what's the point? All the time kind of having this feeling like, what's the point? Sort of losing energy for that kind of like biased, uneven mind. So then the next thing in terms of the heading here is like, so it's the first, we start to go through the actual 7 steps leading up to the 7th, which is Bodhicitta. So the heading says establishing that they all have a likable aspect, which I think I've already mentioned. It's sort of like, it's not a very exciting way to put it. So as I mentioned, so it's the Yong. So it can mean beautiful, it can be pleasing. It's to do with the way that they seem to you, the way they look, the sentient beings look to you. So I noticed His Eminence Ling Rinpoche a few times I had him using the word adorable. So I think that's what he's talking. This is probably what he's talking about, meditations which lead you to this feeling of just really feeling very happy whatever sentient being you see, just delighted to see them. They all look adorable to you. It's not really one of my words, but anyway, this sort of works. Adorable, likable, endearing. They have this endearing appearance. Actually, many, many years ago, this is somebody who some of you might know. There's somebody I know from when I was at Manjushri Institute in England in the late 70s, early 80s, Charak. I remember him saying it's like being in love with all sentient beings. I think he's talking, I think that was actually also quite good. That's what this is about. Being in love with all sentient beings. I'm sure everybody knows what it's like to be in love with somebody, so like that, So any sentient being you see, that's what it evokes in you. I think that was, so anyway, so he lives in San Francisco these days. So that's what I mean, some of you might know him. So there are 3, this has 3 points. In other words, the first 3 of the 7 meditations are aimed at developing, bringing up that kind of state of mind, let's say. So you've got meditating on them as one's mother, remembering their kindness, and meditating on repaying their kindness. So 3 meditations anyway. This word remembering, you see, the Tibetans have, in Tibetan you have one word which, depending upon the context, it can mean to be mindful, it can mean to remember, and it can mean to think about. So when we go through this, I think you'll find that it's not so much to do with remembering, because even if you think about the mother of this life, there's a lot that your mother did for you that you can't remember. You just cannot remember. But you can still think about it. So like that. And as for, past lives, and unless you're one of those that can remember past lives, but even then, there's countless past lives, right? So you can't remember, but you can think about it, and it can become sort of like a living reality for you. So that those three, the first three, recognizing all sentient beings, one's mother, thinking of their kindness, and then repaying the kindness. Tibetan's very straightforward. Ma shi, tin den, tin so. They've all got two syllables. So it saves time to say Tibetan. So meditating on them as one's mother. In the sutras, it is taught that since psychic existence is beginningless, our births are also beginningless. And therefore we have been born and we have died incessantly. No break. So there is no body in psychic existence that we have not taken. I think what that means is, what is that supposed to mean? There's no body we haven't taken. I think what it means is, so many, such a huge variety, almost like limitless variety of forms, even as a human being, that we've had. Where else am I? Where am I? Yeah. And no place where we have not been born. So anyway, we've been born here, there, and everywhere, basically. There's also no one who has not been a relative such as our mother. So everybody has been our mother. They say this is one of the most difficult meditations, seeing the guru as an enlightened being and recognizing all sentient beings as one's mother. And it's true. It's, you can do the meditation. Maybe you feel like, beginningless lives. Can't always have the same mother. Has to keep changing. There's no reason to say that there are some that have been my mother, some that haven't. So okay, so they've all been my mother. But then actually, let's say, feeling that whoever you see, maybe that's the difficult one. Maybe that's the difficult one. There could be, of course, the issue of, certain people you might turn your mind to. You think you just kind of reject the whole possibility that this person could have been your mother. I guess that's already less likely you're going to think that way if you've already got the equanimity. So, but anyway, but I think it's more than that. I think it's just a kind of mindfulness of something which just isn't really normal for us. It's just not normal. But it's still worth persisting with. If you feel that that's true, then just trying to be mindful of it, and it will help. Like they say, why would you want to harm your mother? So cultivating this kind of like recognition, awareness of each person you see, that you interact with, as being your mother, that helps to avoid having that kind of negative or destructive thoughts and actions towards them. Moreover, not only have they been our mother in the past, they will also. Did I finish? Yeah, finish that. Moreover, not only have they been our mother in the past, they will also be so in the future. Therefore, reflecting that way, try to find, gain firm certainty that they've all been your mother. For once that certainty arises, it will be easy to remember the kindness of so. Well, that's obvious, isn't it? How can you think about their kindness if you don't, as your mother, if you don't have any sort of feeling for them being your mother? On the other hand, if it does not arise, you will have no basis for remembering their kindness, thinking about their kindness and so forth. Yeah, so, we go on from here to thinking about the kindness. For many of us, this is pretty straightforward because of having a very good relationship with our mother of this life, and then it all comes from that. Some people, they have they have issues with this for one reason or another. It's been coming in this newspaper my mum likes to get, mainly because of the crossword puzzle. She likes doing a crossword puzzle. It sometimes has some funny articles in it, and one of them, I think it happened a couple of days in succession. Actually, it was about, it wasn't about sons. I don't know if there's anything significant about that, but daughters who completely no connection with their mother anymore. There's one who said, if we, because they still live quite close to each other, if we see each other in town, if we see each other on the street, we completely ignore each other. And actually, in this case, the story, because I read a bit of the story, so when the parents had split up, and then the mother at the wedding refused to be on the same table as her ex-husband. So then the daughter is like, oh, you spoiled the most important day in my life. And so completely cut her out. So yeah, some people have issues, don't they? And there's like when you get separated from when you're young, your mother died maybe in childbirth, so you don't have a whole childhood to think about, and so on. So there can be all sorts of things like that. Anyway, when we get to thinking about the kindness, then we can talk about some of these things. I mean, the very least, unless you're a clone, then your life is from your mother and father, of course. At least you got that. There's that kindness. Okay, so shall we start? Well, let's have a couple of minutes. Time. Couple of minutes. Thinking about that. The all sentient beings being one's mother. Of course, it doesn't make sense unless you already feel comfortable with the idea of past lives. If you don't, then just sort of like sit. You can just sit tight and take what you can from these meditations. Yeah, I mean, I've heard people say, "Well, I'm not sure about past lives, but it's a nice way of thinking." All sentient beings as one's mother. Yeah. Hmm. We're certainly all one family, aren't we? But we'll see if that helps with the kindness. We are definitely one family, right? Not just what do you call it, figuratively speaking. It's a reality, isn't it, that we're all one family. We all come from the same great, however many greats grandmother, and the same great grandfather. It's true, isn't it? I'm not sure if I remember the logic of it, but it's like we are one species, and so therefore we must come from the one mother who had some children, and then they had some children, and they had some children, and they had some children. And then we ended up with, what is it, nearly 8 billion humans, all descended from that same mother, also all descended from the same father. What do they call it? Anyway, yeah, the real Adam and Eve. But the funny thing, of course, is that they didn't meet. The mother that we're all, the great, 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 great grandmother that we're all descended from, and the great, 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 great grandfather we're all descended from, probably never met. Anyway, I did read read about that somewhere, and it's seems like it has to be a fact. We're all descended from that one woman, that one man. If not, there would be two species of humans, which there aren't. There's just the one species. Anyway, that's just maybe by the way, but in a way, it's quite interesting. So we're all family members. We're all one family. Anyway, let's think about that. Usually, the thing about meditating on these things is part of it is. So, what did he just say? And do I agree with that? What's Lama Tsongkhapa saying? Do I agree with him? What is he saying? That's an important thing. What's he saying? What does he mean? Do I agree? And it's more interesting, of course, if you find that you don't agree, because then you can start, there's a little bit of arguing and discussing that can go on. If you think yes, that's also good. Yes, I agree, definitely. Yeah, I mean that's good also. I mean, it's good when you have questions. So your meditation should produce questions. That's a really good thing. If your meditation produces questions, then you can ask, and then you find out, and then you know more. Meditation isn't just spacing out, right? Okay, so let's have a couple of minutes thinking about all sentient beings as one another. So for remembering their kindness, thinking about their kindness. I think we'll probably just start reading through it and then come back to it next time. Oh, we have a question. Yes, please go ahead.
Venerable Steve, when you said that our original ancestors had probably never met, what exactly did you mean by that?
Oh, yeah. Is so that what I mean is that I'm not sure I really sure I understand the science of it, because it's just a scientific idea, right? So the idea is that maybe it's like this. Okay, yeah, if you come from that woman, then I think maybe it wasn't really well put. If you come from that woman, then of course you also come from her husband. So this is actually the idea that the two didn't meet is more to do with the fact that if you so where all of our body is filled with like mitochondria, right? So these mitochondria, the source goes back. That's passed on by the mother, right? The mitochondria is passed on by the mother, and it's in that sense that you can go back to this one woman that would be the source of all the mitochondria that we all have. And then the Y chromosome only comes from the father, right? So there's a similar process, so we got our Y chromosomes from our father, then that comes from his father, his father, his father, going back to this one source for the Y chromosome. And that wouldn't necessarily be, in fact, I think they say just wouldn't be the same as the husband of that original mother that was the source of the mitochondria. And for the moment, I can't remember why that would have to be. So if you maybe I've got a feeling that you could work it out just by thinking about a few generations going back from us. So if let's say my mitochondria would come from it's already beginning to make sense. So my Y chromosome come from my father, then his comes from his father, so that's my granddad. Then he would have got his from his father. So that's on that side of the family. And then my mitochondria come from my mother, so she'd have got it from her mother, my nan. Then she got it from her mother, my great-grand. Then she would have got it from her mother, my great-great-grand. So you see, you're immediately going in different directions. Do you see what I mean?
I think so.
Well, the simple answer really is that for the mitochondria, you're going off in this direction, mother, like maybe just completely unrelated to the. I mean, even going back a few generations, they're totally unrelated. Following the father line and following the mother line, they're totally unrelated. Very far from being. In fact, the only time when they're actually together is in the case of your parents, because my dad and my mum were married and had children, but my dad's dad and my mum's mum were just like they had no relationship at all, except in being, mother and father of that couple. So actually, you've only got to go back one generation, and they separate.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
That cleared it up for us.
Okay. Yeah. I've always thought that was quite a cool idea, even though it's never actually mentioned in the Lam Rim, but anyway, who cares? It's just a scientific fact. Okay, so in fact, I think that brings us to the end for today. So anyway, I hope you have time to, read ahead a bit. I think we'll get through another couple of pages, and look at other Lam Rim teachings to see what it says there. That's also useful, I think, especially like liberation. Maybe also Geshe-Zopa's commentary. Okay, so let's stop there. Should we do some dedication? Thanks. May the precious supreme Bodhicitta not yet born arise. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. Due to all the past, present, and future merits collected by me and all the merits of the 3 times collected by numberless Buddhas and numberless sentient beings, may Bodhicitta be generated in the hearts of all the sentient beings of the 6 realms, and especially in the hearts of everybody in this world, including all the students, benefactors, and volunteers in the FPMT organization. May it be generated in the hearts of all those who rely upon me, all those for whom I have promised to pray, and all those whose names have been given to me. May it be generated in my heart and in the hearts of all my family members, those who are living and those who have died. May the bodhicitta that has already been generated increase. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. I fully dedicate all these virtues to be able to train just like the hero Manjushri, who knows reality, and just like Samantabhadra as well. I fully dedicate all my roots of virtue with the dedication praised as the best by all the gone beyond victorious ones of the 3 times in order to have good conduct. Due to this virtue, may I quickly become a Guru Buddha and lead all transmigratory beings without exception to that state. Due to the past, present, and future merits collected by me, the number of Buddhas and the number of sentient beings which are completely empty of existing from their own side, may I, who am completely empty of existing from my own side, achieve the state of full enlightenment which is completely empty of existing from its own side, and lead all sentient beings who are completely empty of existing from their own side to that state which is completely empty of existing from its own side, by myself alone, who am completely empty of existing from my own side. As long as any sentient being has not been liberated from samsara, may I abide in samsara to help them, even though I achieve highest enlightenment. By merely seeing, hearing, thinking about, or remembering me, as well as by touching me or talking to me, may all suffering instantly be pacified, and may there be happiness forever. Peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas, victorious Losang, father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and for other living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of 3 jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of victorious ones, may the smile of reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. Okay, thanks everybody. I'll see you next time.